Welcome back to the Painting Coach, and in this tutorial we're going to be painting Be'lakor, the Dark Master. If this is your first time on the channel, or you just want to learn how to paint your miniatures, pick up loads of helpful tips and tricks, as well as learn about all kinds of miniatures, then please consider subscribing, and if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified of all my latest videos. So, Be'lakor is a big boy, and one of the big challenges with a model like this is how do we stop it just looking completely grey? How do we bring some colour and tonality into the monochrome nature of the model? So he's all built, he's on his base, but he detaches there nicely. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off. We've sprayed him black, and then I've airbrushed some Abaddon Black over him, but you can just water down over is fine. Now what I'm going to do is take some Corvus Black, and I'm going to dry brush pretty much all the skin and the wings. I'm doing it in a downward motion. So when you're on over here, just take your time. Some big areas here which are easy enough to dry brush, but in and out of the chains, just take your time. So dry brush absolutely everything with this Corvus Black. That'll kind of set off the tone a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll get moving with some tonality around the wings, and we're going to paint the flesh a different tone, and hopefully we'll get a really good looking model at the end of it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush the kind of the spines and these areas here, and I'm just using some Eshin Grey. And I'm just brushing downwards with it. Now don't worry too much if you catch some of the wing membrane, because we're going to use a lighter colour over that anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Just want to get a little bit of a lighter colour along here, because what we're doing is we're just building up tones. And if you haven't got like Eshin Grey, then you can just mix some black and white together in ever lightening tones. The other thing I want to do with the Eshin Grey is where we've got these scales on the shoulder, around the back. I want to do those as well, just because again we're building up different tonalities, and it's really important that we get that right. The next colour I'm going to dry brush is Mechanicus Standard Grey, and this is going over those same areas. So we're looking at the spines down here, we're looking at any kind of scaled areas, sort of around the shoulder there, up the arm. And the other thing I'm doing as well is just on the back here, where you've got the kind of the spine running through, just kind of catching that and that kind of sharp tail as well. So and the other thing I should say I'm doing as well, I'm doing the base with all these greys as well. So I'll just show you that now. So the base itself is quite bright because I've been dry brushing it as well, and that stands us in good stead. We're going to take it even brighter still, but just work your way around now, catching all these spines, those top edges. And then we'll come back and we'll start to do make a start on the membranes next. So the first colour I'm using for the wing membrane is Skaven Brightening, and I'm just focusing kind of on the middle of the wing. I'm not too concerned about having only a little bit of paint on the brush. I don't mind having more paint on the brush, and you can see I'm kind of making long painting motions because we really want to differentiate the colour of these. So even though they're still kind of dark, we still want them to stand out and look different to the other blacks on the model. So work your way around all those membranes, get a nice bit of coverage on there, and then we'll come back next and dry brush on the next layer. You can see that's come out really nicely. So the next layer we're going to do, which is kind of a much, we're going to do it lighter, is with Storm Vermin Fur, and we're focusing this towards the middle of the membrane. So just lightly dry brush it, picking up those raised areas, and don't worry about it may come out a little chalky. Don't worry too much about that, because we're going to play around with some filters which will take some of that away, so don't worry too much. So make sure you do all this. One thing I've not done, I'm not doing any of this on the base. This is purely just the wing membrane, okay? So just work around the wing membrane, aiming for those middle bits. And obviously we've got these little bits under here as well, which are nice and easy to do. and then when we come back we'll give them the final highlight. The last bit of dry brushing for the membrane is just with some Karak Stone. Now this is really light, okay, so you can see I'm moving the brush very quickly just down the middle, and it's, you know, I'm not pushing too hard at all, just catching the most raised areas. So just work your way around, get that done, and that's, you know, giving us a really nice effect on the membrane there. And like I said, we're going to differentiate with some colours and some filters later on, so don't worry too much if you do get a little bit chalky. You can kind of go back and forth if you think that's going to help. But there we are, that's the membrane. So once you've gone around all that, don't forget to do the inside as well. We'll come back and we'll do the skin. So the first colour we're going to use for the skin is Dark Reaper, and we're just dry brushing that on in a downward motion. And what you'll find is that actually that starts to build up that nice bluey black colour. Don't forget the face as well, the neck area. So we're looking to do, you know, the hands as well. Don't worry too much if it goes over where you've got the scale area, because again, it just all adds to it. And then you've got these little I want to call them muscles where the wings attach as well, so just work down over them. So get that done all over the skin and the hands, and then we'll come back and add the next highlight. The next highlight for the flesh is with some Thunderhawk Blue, and this is kind of lighter in terms of how I apply it with the touch as well, but still in that downward motion, so we keep that shadow. And you might wonder what kind of brush I'm using. This is actually a makeup brush. It's a short stubby brush, and what that does is fairly firm bristles, so it means I can go in if I want to do additional work, or I want to kind of blend a little bit harder or smoother than I can. It's really quite useful and beneficial. I'll put a link in the description to the makeup brushes that I use. So we're just looking to catch all the kind of most prominent bits. Again, don't forget these muscles that we've got along the back, and we're always moving downwards, so we catch those raised areas and leave a bit of shadow in the recesses. And you can start to see now that the different colours, so we're still kind of got dark black colours, but we kind of got a warm black in the on the wings, a cooler black around the skin and the torso. And don't worry if it goes in the gaps, because I am going to put, again, like I said, some filters around this just to help darken it down and play with some of the texture that Daz Latham has sculpted on this. Fantastic sculpt. Instructions could do with a little bit a little bit of revising, but the sculpt itself is fantastic. Colour just to kind of brighten some of these edges is some Fenrisian Grey. So I put it on a little bit too heavy there, but that's fine. We'll tone that back later. So just work it on those kind of raised areas. So you catch that where that skin is on there, and again, we're covering less and less every time, and we take our time, make sure we just catch the most raised areas to get the highlights in. And we've got a nice blue colour there, and that pronunciation of blue is for my patrons who all enjoy how my thick Welsh accent pronounces the word blue on YouTube. So thanks guys for all your support, I really appreciate it. So yeah, work your way around, get that highlighted, and like I said, don't worry if it's looking too blue for you, because we're going to come back and we are going to tone it down later, but I just want to make this area a bit brighter to draw attention to it. And just to finish up the kind of the brightest little bit on the skin, we're just going to very lightly dry brush some Celestra Grey in here, just over the most prominent areas, just giving us that decent, just brighter focus of light, which just, like I said, when we come and tone it down later, it'll all blend in quite nicely and won't be so quite as harsh, but it will be a really nice effect. So get that done, and I think that's it for the dry brushing. I'm going to dry brush the edges of the base with this Celestra Grey as well, so get that done, and then we'll come back and we'll make a start on probably the metallics, because we want to get them done out of the way, and then we'll work our way through the model. So let's start with the silver, and the colour I'm going to use for this is Iron Warriors. Now you can see on the palette's quite messy because I'm using the new Red Grass Games Stay Wet palette. I'm on my third use, so if you've not heard of the palette, then one of the things, or one of the claims they make, is that you can wash the sheet, which is great. And like I said, I'm on my third use, which is really good. So enough about the palette, back to Bellico. I will be doing a full review on the palette, so keep an eye out for that. So what I'm doing is I'm painting with the Iron Warriors. I'm not dry brushing, but I'm just running the brush over, so it's only catching the kind of the raised parts. And because there's so much of this metal, we don't want to spend forever painting it. So just paint it over, and obviously take your time, be careful those bits you've already finished. Don't forget to do, there's quite a lot of metal on the model. You've got the base as well, so don't forget to do that. Just take your time around the bits you've finished on the wings. And you can see there actually is quite a nice contrast. Apologies, the car's outside. And then you've also got things like the shoulder pads as well, so paint any bits of armour with this, and then we'll come back and we'll paint the gold, or we'll start the gold next, and then we'll shade it all together and highlight it. So we'll do the gold next, and the reason I'm going to do the gold next is because we're going to kind of shade them with the same colour. We're going to go for a battered metal effect. So the gold I'm using is Retributor armour, and just place it around, you've got this armour trim. So it may cover in one, especially if you've painted the silver over it, like I have by mistake here. But you may need to give it just a second coat in some places. So we've got that little bit of trim. The other thing, we've got some trinkets as well on the wings and things like this here, so you can afford to be a little more messy with that. Just be careful when you come up to the silver. Don't forget also you've got things like the rings on the finger, get that done, and obviously any gold bits on the base as well. So once you've got all that done and you're happy with it, then we'll come back, we'll shade them both together, and then we'll start the process of highlighting. Once we've got all that done and we're happy it's dry, I'm going to shade it all with some Agrax Earthshade. So that's the gold as well as the silver. So this is really going to darken down in some areas. We just want to tint it, we don't want to flood the area. So just take your time working on. If you see it pooling in huge amounts, then just move it along. So we're going to do a kind of a battered effect on this metal, because Bellico's been around for quite a while. So nice and easy, nice and straightforward, and then we'll come back once it's dry. When we're happy that that's all dry, I'm going to take some Necron Compound and just lightly brush it over the silver. Just taking my time, making sure that I don't catch any of the organic bits. And then for the armor plates, I'm just stabbing it down quite roughly, because that'll kind of give me that dull metal iron look that I want. So work your way around, get that all done. I probably haven't got enough on my brush really, so I want these to be a little brighter, so I can do all the rest of the metal. Don't forget to do the metal on the base as well, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at highlighting some of the gold next. To highlight the gold, we're going to use some Liberator Gold. So in terms of, this should be fairly straightforward in catching those raised areas. But if you will take the opportunity to not be as smooth as perhaps we normally would be with some of these edges. So I'm just kind of flicking my hands slightly to just make that highlight quite rough. Because what we'll do is we're going to give this all one other highlight before we finish, which will really kind of brighten things up. So just take your time, work your way around any gold bits that you want to highlight with this. Don't get me wrong, if you don't want to, if you just want to dry brush them with the silver, then again, that's absolutely fine. It's entirely up to you. I'm just giving them a little bit of a extra pop with this, because there's not that much gold on there. So work around, get it done, and we'll add the final highlight to all the gold and the silver next. colour we're going to use to just add a little bit of brightness is our ever faithful chrome from Vallejo Model Air. And in terms of how I'm going to use this, so I just make sure my brush isn't too wet. What I'm looking to do is just pick out some of the most raised areas. So I made a bit of a mistake there. No, it's not, just a bit of dust. Wipe that off. Just working around, and then when it comes to things like the plates, make sure I'm still in focus here. Just looking to pull along the bottom there. Just kind of giving that bright highlight. And the same then for the gold. Just catching those kind of top parts of the gold. Just to give it a little bit of extra light. So work your way all the way around the model. Get that done. There's not too much, it won't take you too long. And then we'll come back and I think we're going to start all these kind of claws and horns next. So let's get to work on these horns. Now they're going to be like a little brighter, so they're really offset against the model. The colour I'm using is Celestra Grey. So I've thinned it a little bit, but you can see there, I'm probably going to need a couple of coats to get it to cover properly. So we've got all these kind of teeth here. We've got the main horns as well on Be'lakor, because what we're going to do is we're going to shade them down towards the head and towards the tip using the brighter colour in the middle, just to kind of imitate some of the box art. Other things as well, we've got the wing tips here to do. There's quite a few bits to do in this colour as well. And then we've got the little horns jutting out of his armour, of his flesh and his skin as well. So get those done. You'll have to go all the way around. There are quite a few bits to do with this. And then we'll come back and we'll give it a little bit of a shade, and then we'll build up the highlights. So once all that is done and dry, we're going to shade it all down now. And the colour we're going to use is Space Wolf's Grey contrast paint. And I've thinned this with 2 parts contrast medium, 1 part Space Wolf's Grey. I'm just going to paint this over all of the horns, let it settle in those recesses. Don't let it pool too much. I mean, that's about right for me. I don't want it to be too hugely dark. Obviously when it dries it'll kind of pull together a bit as well. And then for the talons, again, just paint them over, and what will happen is once we stand him on the base, this will kind of run down and darken the bottom. It'll give us a really nice transition. So get all that done, and then we'll come back and highlight it up next. When we're happy that Space Wolf's Grey contrast paint is dry, I'm going to move on now and use some Ulthuan Grey to start highlighting. So for these horns, that's nice and straightforward. We're just looking to catch those raised areas, and you can run the brush across the middle there like that. Nice and simple. Not too much hassle. And like I said, with those horns, we're going to do a little bit of blending with them afterwards anyway. And then when it comes to the talons, again, where we can, let's use the shape of the plastic to guide us. Nice and straightforward. And I'm just going to see if we can turn this in a way where A, we're in focus, and B, you can see what I'm doing. We're going to pick up that kind of bit there with the tip of the brush, and that's just going to give us a nice harsh line, which really does help us with the highlight. So there's quite a bit to do, so work all the way around doing that with the Ulthuan Grey, and then we'll come back with the final highlight next. That Ulthuan Grey has given us a really nice, stark and sharp look to some of these parts now. So what we want to do is we just want to finish them off with a little bit of white scar. You can see that it's very, very thin, this white scar, but we're not doing too much. We're just looking to catch those kind of top ridges of things. And when it comes to the claws, we're just looking to catch the sharpest part of them. So just move the brush over, catching that, and I'll just add to the kind of sharp effect that we've got there. So not a huge amount to do on or show on this step, but it just adds to the effect that we're going for. So get that done all over. Once we've done that, I think the next bit we're going to do this loincloth. That's a nice easy part for us. And then once we've done the loincloth, we're going to jump onto the sword. So Be'lakor is looking nice and striking at the moment. So let's do his loincloth then. And the colour I'm going to use for this is Screamer Pink. And I've just noticed my Screamer Pink is fairly thin, so it's probably going to need 2 coats to cover properly. Just take your time when you get around to those bits that you've already finished, those metallics. Make sure you work it in. And obviously we're doing front to back, this part here, and just like I said, be careful when you get to that top part by the skin. You don't want it to spill over. So get that base coated and we'll give it a little bit of a shade next. Shading this loincloth is fairly straightforward. You can use a little bit of Drakenhoff Nightshade. If you've got something like Null Oil, or if you want to thin some Leviadon Blue, then you can get the kind of same effect. And this is quite a tattered loincloth, so with that in mind, we're going to paint it as such. So all I'm doing is just covering the main parts of it with that Drakenhoff Nightshade. And when we come back, what I'll do is I'll show you how to highlight it in such a way that makes it look like tatty cloth, because that's what it is. So we don't want it to be too clean. So get that done, let it dry, and then we'll come back and highlight it up next. So once that Drakenhoff Nightshade's dry, go back to the Screamer Pink and get some on your brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to stipple this along those kind of raised edges. So we're not going for particularly smooth highlights. And if you accidentally slip into a darker area, that's fine. Same down here, we're stippling it on. We're not looking for smoothness, we're just looking to catch those main areas. So when you're happy with that, let it dry, and then we'll come back with a final highlight just to finish off the loincloth. Once we finish off the loincloth, we're going to go in, we're going to start these skulls, and obviously the lava flow on the base, we're going to get that all based as well. I'm going to finish off the highlighting of that loincloth with some pink horror. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly the same thing, so make sure you've got a good tip on your brush. And then we're just going to stipple, so just dots around those sharpest areas, and you can see then it just gives the effect of frayed material. Same thing here, so just dotting along, dotting away all the way across this, making sure that we've got everything covered. If you put too much on, you can always just stipple on some more of the Screamer Pink just to cover it all up, and similarly if you haven't got enough, you can put some more on. So this is really artist's choice in terms of how much you put on there, but I'm quite happy with that. So with that finished, before we jump onto the skulls, I think actually it makes sense to do the leather. So we'll do the leather next, then we'll jump onto the skulls. So there's a fair bit of leather on him. From the sensor, it's in some quite awkward position, so I'm just going to base it with some Doombull Brown. So we've got the leather here, so just take your time, make sure you don't go over anything you've already finished. See, I've gone over some of those hooks, so I'll just repair that with some silver. Just take your time. And then we've got the straps as well. So we've got some there on his arm, we've got some on his leg armour and his shoulder armour as well. So get those all done and based, and then we'll come back and we'll shade and then highlight. Shading the leather, very simple. A little bit of Agrax Earthshade, just paint it over. Again, you don't want it to flood it, or to, flood so that it pools. I haven't fixed these bits of silver yet. I'm not going to fix those until I finish the leather. The reason for that is because I could just very well go and make exactly the same mistake again. So definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So just work your way around. The other thing I did as well, I painted the sword handle, and I realised I missed some bits to do on the back of the sword to do in the same style as the horn. So I'm going to go back and finish those as well. So get all that Agrax done, make sure it's dry, and we'll come and highlight it next. going to highlight the leather with some Scrag Brown. So again, it's a much brighter brown in comparison to what that Doombull will look like. And what we're looking to do is very similar to the cloth, is to just stipple that highlight to give the impression of a bright leather, but a worn leather nonetheless. Just adds to the kind of effect. And of course, once you're done with that, you're happy, you can go back and, I'm going to repair the mistakes I made. You may have been a much better person than I am, and you may not have made mistakes, which is absolutely fine. So just work your way around using that kind of stippling effect to highlight it, and then we'll go off and we'll bring the base back, and I'll show you on the base how I'm going to paint the skulls. But there's also work on the base we need to do as well. So I've got the base here, and there's a bit of work to do on this. So Be'lakor is covered in human skulls. So what we want to do is we want to use some Corax White, and then you can use just Corax White to paint all the human skulls. Now, if you want some variation, then you can paint some of them in Wraithbone, for example. But I'm happy with the with Corax White, and this goes for all the skulls on Be'lakor's wings as well. It's not just what's on his base here. So on the base, there's also some lava. Now, I'm not going to spend ages building up lava effects. I'm going to try and do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So what I'm going to do is paint the lava flows with this Corax White. So you see here, there's actually another bone as well. So any bones you find on Be'lakor's base, paint them with Corax White. Paint all these streams. The other things I want to paint as well are Be'lakor's eyes. In fact, what I'll do is I'll sort of finish showing you this here, and we'll bring Be'lakor back because I want you to see what I do on him. So if we bring him back and make sure we're in focus with him. So we're still using the Corax White. So I want to paint this on his chest. So don't worry too much if you go outside the lines, because we're gonna make this glow a little bit. So just get that worked in there. And there's also then we want to paint his eyes. So it's always difficult on camera. Just there like that. So do all those bits, paint all the skulls, like all the skulls on the wings with Corax White, and then we'll come back and start to add some colour to them. First thing we'll do is we'll get all these skulls done, bones I should say. I'm using Skeleton Horde for this, and all I'm doing is I'm just painting over the white that we've put down. Now what you can do is, if you want some variation, you can put a couple of coats on. You can use some different colour contrast paints, like if you like black for example, that might work. Just be careful not to run over these veins, because we're going to paint them next. And when it comes to doing the Skeleton Horde, don't forget obviously you've got all the skulls on Be'lakor's wings. So make sure you get those done as well. And also his teeth. So if you haven't painted his teeth white, paint his teeth white and then use Skeleton Horde over them. And that's what I'm going to do. And then we'll pick them up and highlight them later. So nice and easy step. Work your way around. Get all this Skeleton Horde on. Use different colours if you want some variation. And then we'll come back and we'll do the lava next. So as that Skeleton Horde dries, we can move on and we can make a start on the lava. So the colour I'm using is Iyanden Yellow contrast paint. I am just running this all over the Corax White that we painted into the veins. Don't worry too much if it goes over some of the grey, because when it dries it'll blend in, and we're going to use another colour over that anyway, just to help us along. So get that all done. You can see it's already starting to look quite lava-esque. And then when we come back, we'll just add a little more colour to this lava, but also to some of the rocks as well. We want to add an additional colour to this, and the colour that's going to be is Gryph Hound Orange. And now you shouldn't go too much on your brush, but essentially we want to kind of put this around some of the edges, particularly where perhaps you've gone over the stonework with the white. You can see there, real simple, really basic, and actually we're starting to get a nice kind of lava effect, which, you know, when it dries, I mean, that's basically minimal effort. The only kind of skill around this is knowing where to place it, and really, when you put Bellica on top, it's going to look really effective for hardly any effort at all, and that's always a win in my book, and hopefully you see that as well. If you do, like I've done there, just wipe it off with your finger, and then just put it on. And the other thing I'm going to do with this is, while I've got it out, is where I've got sort of here and I've not painted it in with the white, I'm just going to paint it in, because what you'll see, it'll be thick enough to just give you the impression of that darker orange colour. So work your way around, doing as much or as little as that as you want, and then that's the base pretty much done. We'll get Bellica back and we'll focus then on his horns, his eyes, getting that skin tied together, and of course finally the sword. Moving back to Bellica, let's do the chaos symbol on his chest as well as his eyes. So the colour we're going to use for this is Aethermatic Blue. So you see, it's dropping it on there nice and easily. It gives you that blue effect on his eyes. We're going to do the same thing for the chaos symbol on his chest. Now, I'm trying to paint this model neutral for, you know, whether you want to use it for 40k or Age of Sigmar. Now, according to the box, that the blue chest symbol is 40k, but, you know, rule of cool. And I think that this looks cooler than the dark one. So I'm going to let that dry. And then once that's dry, we're going to come back in. And I think what we'll do is we'll do the flesh next, because we can get that kind of in the books and finished off. So the colour I'm going to use for the skin, but also for those horns as well. It's 1 part Black Templar contrast paint, 1 part Leviadon Blue, and then basically 4 parts contrast medium, so it's really thin. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this just to paint over all the skin. You can see straight away when you compare the two halves that you're getting a really nice effect there. So just use this all over the skin, and you should blend it in, take away any harshness that you may have created through the dry brushing. Just take your time around the chaos icon, and then paint that all over the kind of the skin on the arms. The other thing I want to do with this is I want to start on the horns, so make sure you don't have too much on your brush. And what we want to do, so kind of this part here, probably up to about there, maybe just past that ring on both sides, and also then you want to paint up the kind of the tip here using the same colours. Now if you put too much on like that, it's not a problem, just clean your brush and then just drag it forward like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build that up, build that layer up quite a bit. So essentially what I'll do is I'm going to get quite a bit of dark colouring towards the front like that, and towards the end there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have the lighter colour in the middle. So fairly straightforward. Take your time, you need to let it dry in between. And then when we come back, we should have some nice transitions on the horns. And obviously, because we're going to be painting the face as well in here, we can blend these horns into the face. So get that done, let it all dry. Like I said, take your time. I might come back in and show you kind of progress halfway before I finish it off, rather than just kind of, you know, just leave you to do it. So paint all the skin first, paint that first layer on the horns, and then we'll come back. So this is where we're at after 2 coats of that mix, and you can see it's really darkening down and really giving us a nice effect. So what we want to do, just building in towards the lower end and the top end, just adding more of that mix, just like that, to really darken it down. You'll still get some of the highlight through the middle, through the bottom, but actually that then gives us the effect we're looking for. So that's that done, and I think looking at it, we probably need to come in and give that face a bit of a highlight. Everything else has dried really nicely. The skin looks really nice and leathery. So once that's dry, we'll come in and we'll give the face a highlight, just to pick out some key areas. So in terms of highlighting up the face, we can use the same 3 colours that we used before. So we've got Dark Reaper, Thunderhawk Blue, Fenrisian Grey. So I'm going to start off with the the Dark Reaper, what we're looking to do is just catch any kind of prominent areas just on the head there, and working our way round. And essentially this is just giving us the base back for when we jump up to the next colours. So next up, make sure your brush is clean. I've got a lot of Thunderhawk Blue there because I accidentally put too much water in it, so it's too thin. So now we're just looking to catch the kind of the most raised areas. So you're looking for cheekbones, building up some of that texture on Bellicore's face. Just checking I'm in shot. I should have checked that before, but I think we're okay, we're not too bad. And then lastly, I'm not cleaning my brush, I'm just popping into that Fenrisian Grey. The amount of Thunderhawk Blue I had is negligible. And then we're just using this on the kind of sharpest edges. So we've got some horns along the lip there, just touching it on, blending it all into the effect. And obviously we've got the nose. And the other thing we can do with this is we've got these veins raised as well, so we can just run it over some of the raised veins just to add some definition to them. So work your way around, do as much or as little as you want. Really happy with that. I'm going to just paint the teeth with some white scar, and then we'll come back, we'll paint that sword. So Bellicore's looking pretty good. So we've just got the sword. I want to put a bit of life into the wing membranes. So I'm going to take some Sotek Green. I'm going to paint all of the sword. Keep it in kind of shot there. Now the Sotek Green, it's a layer paint, so it's only going to cover. Okay, now what I'm looking to do is I'm not going to paint all the smoke. I'm going to paint that white in the next step. So I'm just looking to get over about halfway up the smoke and then make sure that I can get it down there. So you can see there that it's not covering fantastically well. So what we'll do is we'll give it 2 coats, and then we'll come back and we'll paint the smoke, and then what we'll do is we'll look to blend them together a bit. So once that Sotek Green is dry, we're going to have a little bit of fun. And you can see here I've basically got some Corax White, and I've kind of mixed that into the Sotek Green to get this kind of bluey colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to paint that over all the black, all the smoke rather, coming off the model, and you can see that it actually matches into that Sotek Green actually quite nicely. So I'm using an old brush to do this, a nice thick brush, so I can cover it up as quick as possible. It's just working a way around, painting it all on. So that's just kind of the one side I finished there. And then what I'm going to do is just go to plain Corax White. Now I'm just going to paint up around the tips. And because the paint's a little wet, it's kind of like a little bit of a wet blending effect going on, and we're actually getting a decent transition. I probably need a bit more, put a bit more white down on the palette. And that's, you can see there, it's pulling the black to underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to build that kind of colour all the way as I go. So if I flip it over, make sure we're in focus, I think we are there. And then I'm going to paint these the same. So do that yourself, get all this kind of smoke covered, and then we'll continue to work on it some more. One thing you can also do as well while you've got this mix on the palette, I've kind of started to do, and we're going to refine this down, is you can just catch all those edges, just bring them down into the sword, so all these kind of bits of smoke, just like that. And then we want to smooth kind of this transition here as well, so you just want to bring these quietly into there, just like that. And then what we want to do then is we're going to get some white, we'll highlight that next, and then we'll blend it all together. So using some white white scar. We just want to follow the edge of the sword and just highlight up this smoke. Just we've got that nice kind of transition to the white. We want to do this all the way along. What we're going to do in the next step is kind of blend it all together, and then we'll come back and add some white to it so we can get some of the sharpness back, particularly along the blade, so that it's got that kind of glass look. So work your way all the way around getting that done, then we'll come back, shade it, final highlight, and then it's just the wings and Be'lakor's done. So it seems a bit of a shame, but we're going to cover all of this over now with some Aethermatic Blue. And this goes over all the smoke, all the blade as well. Just work it over. And this will help blend together where the two zones transition into each other. So get that done, let it dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to reinstate some of the white just to give it some sharpness, and then we'll do the wings and we're done. Got a really cool looking sword now, so what we want to do is just want to highlight back up some of the raised areas, and then we've just got the wings to do. So just using white scar again, just going to highlight, like I said, those bits that are most prominent. The other thing to do as well is move it along and catch the edge of the sword, just to give it that kind of sharp point. So work your way around, don't forget to do both sides obviously, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at doing the kind of just put a bit of life into the wings, and then young or old Be'lakor, I should say, is done. So the last thing we want to do is you just want to bring a little bit of colour into the wings. So I'm going to show you in this area here. So we're going to take some Volupus Pink. Now this is mixed with Contrast Medium, 2:1. And what we're doing is just painting it kind of along that lower part, just like that. Clean your brush off and then just feather that out a little bit, and then when that dries, that'll just give you a nice bit of definition and depth of colour there. The other thing we're going to do as well is we're going to just take a smaller brush and just run this kind of along the line there of the spines on the wing, just to give a little bit of differentiation, a little bit of additional colour to the model. So get that done. You can then glue him to the base, paint the base for him in a colour that suits the rest of your army, and that's Be'lakor done. And there we have it. Be'lakor is done and he's ready for the tabletop. Whether you play Age of Sigmar or Warhammer 40k, you can use this model in both games. He's completely neutral without any defining parts, so you can use him wherever you want. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please leave a like and a comment down below. It really does help me make sure I'm producing the kind of content that you guys want to see. If you'd like to support me and the channel, you can do so using the links in the description. There's a link for my Patreon where you get exclusive access to me via our Discord. You get a monthly live frequently asked questions via YouTube Live. And you also get some exclusive content. There's also the link for Goblin Gaming where you can get up to 20% of all your wargaming needs. And my Amazon affiliate links where you can get a list of all my recommended equipment. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.